Whoo, baby. Whoo. Man, who said that home games mattered? Because the road team, excuse me as I nearly drop the camera here, the road team has won every game in this series so far. That is unreal. The Dallas Mavericks take a 3-2 series lead behind an absolute beast of a game from Luka Doncic. That first half, he was, as the first comment laid out, an animal. And that's not to say that the Mavericks didn't nearly wet the bed at the end, taking a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left. Lets it wind down to a single point, a 9-0 run in the blink of an eye by LA in the span of like a minute 13 seconds. And LA gets a turnover. Luka trying to feed it, I think it was Maxey inside. You get a fast break situation in which somehow Terrence Mann decides, I'm going to attack baseline. We got Paul George on the floor. We got Kawhi Leonard on the floor. I'm going to go baseline, and I'm going to try and dish it off to Batum for a game winner, essentially, because we're under 10 seconds at that point, and if they get a basket there, they go up at least one, if not two, if it's a three. So, unbelievable in that situation for them to try that, for them to not make that assessment of, this might not be the best look we could get right now. Regardless, though, it is a big, big win for Dallas. LA won the last two games. Dallas gets back in the win column. They are now 5-0 all-time in the playoffs at the Staples Center. That's crazy. Beat the Lakers twice and now have beaten the Clippers 3 times in the Staples Center. Holy crap. Now, Dallas in this game, very, very up and down. It's a gritty win that they nearly give away. Luka, as I said, was a monster in the first half, 27 points in the first half, I think 19 at the end of the first quarter. He was 5 of 5 starting from 3 in this game. I mean, he was unconscious. And you had moments where his teammates stepped up, looked like they were competent. You had other times where things just went ice cold. This was not a big game from KP, but he did have a couple of big three-pointers as well. Tim Hardaway Jr., again, not the lights-out Tim Hardaway Jr. performance that we saw in games 1 and 2, but he had a big three as well that pushed a very tepid Dallas lead. That fourth quarter was rough for Dallas. They ended the third quarter on a 16-0 run that took a, I think, 6-point deficit, flipped it on its head, and allowed them to build a lot of momentum. But holy crap, that fourth quarter was brutal for Dallas offensively. Now, defensively, they battened down the hatches. Rick Carlisle makes a lineup change here, starting Boban, and this came out a couple hours before tip-off, and this was like met with a lot of derision. A lot of people didn't like the call. I admit I wasn't thrilled with it because I thought, we saw Boban about 15 minutes in Game 4, and it didn't really help us. It didn't give us the matchups we were looking for, and I didn't know how much it was going to help us here. But LA, their scoring in the paint was so at will through the first 4 games. It was a complete turnaround here. Here, the first quarter, LA barely got anything in the paint. I think with like halfway through the second quarter, they had 12 points in the paint. Kawhi was a slow start in that regard as well. So this was just a very, very big change here. Defensively, Dallas made a lot of good plays. Like Dorian Finney-Smith forced several steals. Couldn't knock down an open 3 to save his life, but he forced a lot of steals, a lot of turnovers for LA in that regard. And yeah, when it came down to it, even though I don't know if Luka was running out of gas there at the very end, he certainly was struggling late. In the final couple minutes, he had the deep missed three-pointer that I think he tried to shoot over Kawhi. He missed, I think, his last 4 threes of the game. He tried the Dirk turnaround, but he looked like he was kind of stumbling as he did it, like he was way off balance, not just in the fadeaway kind of way. And so the result is Dallas, East Side, I don't know what you're doing the eyeball emoji for. Dallas won the game, you troll. But Dallas wins the game in spite of the near heart attack at the very end. rough going late. The late game execution in the clutch was not great on the offensive end, but the defense was good. You were getting stops. You were forcing them into tough shots. And then you have the blunder of all blunders. Like I said, Terrence Mann, for some reason, he's got a real ego on him that he says, you know what? We're down one with like 15 seconds left. I got Paul George and freaking Kawhi Leonard on the floor with me. I'm going to drive this bad boy baseline and try and dump off for Nicholas Batum. What? I honestly, when Luka threw that turnover with like 16 seconds left, trying to force it to Maxey inside, I really was concerned that was going to be the end of it. I was concerned that was going to be the end of the game. Appreciate you, man. I liked your thing video. Appreciate it. I got more of that stuff coming, by the way. Off season. It's an off season thing. But yeah, I was really convinced that was going to be the deciding thing there. I thought, okay, they're going to get, at the very least, get fouled and go to the line. Because when you go up 10 in a minute, 15 seconds maybe, you gave up a 9-0 run. You gave up a wide open three, first to Reggie Jackson and then to Marcus Morris. You're not getting good possessions on the offensive end. And then you have the turnover, you lead that going the other way. It just was a rough go for Dallas in those closing minutes. And it's one of those things where sometimes the clock is your best friend, right? Dallas built up that benefit. By closing the third quarter on a 16-0 run, they allowed themselves to completely flip the dynamic of this game. Because this was a game that LA had felt in control of until about the last 6 minutes of the third quarter. And then Dallas went on that run, that I think 16-0 run, and they took what was like a 72-66 lead or something like that, and they completely turned it upside down. And instead, the Clippers were the ones starting out with their backs against the wall. Dallas didn't matter that offensively. They didn't have much going in the fourth quarter. They got it going. They made the shots when they had to. And it feels like if there had been another minute in this game, it would have come back to bite Dallas. That's how it felt. That's what I was saying. Sometimes the clock is your friend, because Dallas gets out of there with a 105-100 victory. Luka, like I said, goes cold towards the end, misses his last few threes, had a couple turnovers, and not strong execution in crunch time from Dallas. But the benefit is they were at least getting stops defensively. The fact that they held LA to 100 points, considering what their defensive rating has been all series long, this was a huge victory. And this is, as much as we want to talk about, like, this series is obviously still very much up in the air. It could be a 6-game series. It could be a 7-game series. It is still completely up in the air right now. But at the very least, you are a step progressed further than last year. If you go down, it's going to be in Game 7. And apparently at this point, they might as well paint a Mavericks logo on the Staples Center court, because we own that bitch. 5-0 all time in the playoffs at the Staples Center are the Dallas Mavericks. And it has been, people say like, oh, it's not a series until the home team wins. Well, the home team doesn't have to win a single game in this series. I mean, ideally, we would do it in Game 6. It's going to be a massive Game 6, the biggest playoff game post-championship. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Dallas responds now back at home, because they really wet the bed the past in Games 3 and 4. So whether or not they can actually execute and close this out is going to be huge. Now, I liked the adjustments that Dallas made defensively in particular. They seemed more active, and even though the offense dropped off, they were still forcing a lot of turnovers. They were rebounding better, and the points in the paint was a massive shift. I don't know what the final numbers were for points in the paint for LA, but it's drastically less than they had gotten all series long. And that's why you were able to hold this in check. That's why you win 105-100. You win a game, and like the way this series had been progressing, I think they won 113-103 in Game 1, and then 127-121. The way the series had been progressing, it didn't much feel like you would be able to win a game in which you barely crack 100. And yet, they did. and their defense is a big part of that. They got energy from it. I just saw in the comments there, shout out again, Dwight Powell. I don't know why Dwight Powell didn't get more minutes in this series prior. Again, Powell was playing very good basketball at the end of the regular season. He did not get, and you heard like, oh, it might have been matchup related and things of that nature, but he's an element that was missing from the playoffs last year against LA, and his energy and his activity was very big in this game. Not just rebounding, but you saw times he was very decisive with the ball. At one point, he didn't get an and one out of the play, but he was trying to get the ball to Luka, who at the time, this was like first quarter, at the time was just scorching hot. And LA was so hard denying on him. He just felt the contact, rolled around, like spun to the basket, drove hard, drew a foul from Kawhi Leonard. Again, didn't get the and one, but still a good, aggressive play that gets you a trip to the line. He gets a foul on one of their, obviously, biggest guys. Their biggest guy, frankly. So, yeah, I like the changeup. I want to see Josh Green. I'm not saying you got to play Josh Green big minutes. You changed things up in Game 4. You got a little desperate, right? You brought out Boban in that game early on. You played him 15 minutes. He gave you like 12 and 6 in that time, but he was a defensive liability, and he still was tonight, but he gave you enough of a lift in other areas that you needed. You rolled out Dwight Powell, playing a bigger role for him tonight than he had been playing. I like that. The game before, you also gave about 10 minutes to Trey Burke that I didn't so much like. I know he had a good series last year against LA, respective to what his role was at that point in the hot streak he had been on in the bubble. But I'd like to see Josh Green get a chance to really come in and impact the game in that way. I'm not saying you got to give him 10 minutes, but I think you can get 4, 5, maybe 6 really good minutes out of Josh Green. I think he can give you a little bit of, frankly, what Terrence Mann is giving the Clippers. I think he's got that same kind of spark plug energy facet to him that he can bring to this team. And we've seen at times when this team was struggling to kind of get over the hump a little bit late in the regular season, before they really, really turned things on, he was a real energy guy, right? At Miami was a very, very big impact he brought, where he kind of helped turn the tide there. So you've got these opportunities to shake things up further, which I like. I like that you didn't just lay everything out there. You still have moves you can make. But the adjustments of Carlisle here clearly worked. And even though Dallas as a whole, again, started hot, they got back in track in terms of they won the first quarter, they won the game. So now it's, 30-1 this year when they lead after the first quarter. That's incredible stuff. But the hot starts are huge for Dallas. And even though the late game execution wasn't great in this case, and I would say that really the fourth quarter, it kind of felt like they were running out of steam until you had the Hardaway and Porzingis threes. It really boiled down to this team showing a grittiness and a toughness where they said, like, all right, yeah, that was a bad possession, or all right, that's another empty possession, but you know what? You're not getting us on the other end. And how many times did Paul George cough it up late in that game, too? He had back-to-back turnovers where Dorian was just poking it away, swatting it away as he was driving on help defense, reaching over and knocking that free. And then George had another drive where he basically nearly completely fell down. He kicked it out, and they still got something out of the possession. But Paul George looked like he was unraveling a little bit late in that. And Kawhi Leonard, when he was getting the ball late, he wasn't doing the clutch Kawhi Leonard things. So maybe fatigue is overall just starting to become a little bit of a factor in this series. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Dallas certainly looks worn down. His role players are not performing at the same clip that they did in games 1 and 2 when, to be fair, you're going to shoot over 50% from 3 through the first 3 games. It's not likely you're going to keep that going. But they still delivered timely scoring when they had to have it, and they still managed to get a lot of defensive stops, because a lot of times in that regard, it just comes down to hustle and effort. You got to have the heart to actually stick to that and fight through the fatigue. And it felt like Dallas did that tonight. It felt like even in the scramble drill, even in that, as much as I kind of made fun of it. The Terrence Mann drive baseline, trying to dump it off to Batum for what would have been the game winner. Dallas scrambled. They swarmed to the ball. It was almost like they saw. That man was going baseline, and they were like, "Holy crap! Collapse." He's going to try and do this himself. This isn't either of their two guys. This is a perfect scenario. Now, all of that would have to occur to them in like an instant, but still, it was a swarming defense that didn't give up anything. And the fact that they not only forced first the dump off pass, but then the miss right at the basket by Batum, and got the rebound. That was huge. Hardaway goes to the line, knocks down 2 free throws to extend the lead from 1 point back to 3. And then you get, a Kawhi Leonard missed 3, I think. And then Josh Richardson gets the rebound, knocks down 2 more free throws. That's all she wrote. Just unbelievable to get out of there with that, because you nearly let it go, but Dallas held on and refused to give in the final moment. So it's a great win for Dallas. They are, I think, the 4th best road win percentage team this year, they said during the broadcast. So among the teams in the NBA, they had the 4th best road winning percentage. And that's clearly helped them in this series, because they're 3-0 on the road. And just like we saw in the regular season, unfortunately, they suck at home. They got waxed, especially Game 4, waxed at home. Game 3 was an electric start, followed by kind of a long, wet fart, is how it felt. I know Game 3 was much closer than that, but it ended up in a 10-point defeat. So we have to see how this team responds, and more so, we have to see how they close, because this is going to be a pesky team in LA, I think, every step of the way. Just like that 9-0 run in the blink of an eye showed in this game, that wasn't instigated by Kawhi or Paul George. Again, that's Reggie Jackson and that's Marcus Morris. I think Kawhi maybe got a layup that made it 9. Yeah, Kawhi got an and one that made it 9, and it was very, very fast, that response. But it started with their role players. They're not just going to run through those 2 guys. They're going to be gritty, and they're going to make plays in that situation. So Dallas has to be willing to play to the final buzzer, and it felt like tonight they built that 10-point lead, and then I think they had possession, and you get that Luka super deep 3-point attempt that misses. You get a 3. Then you get another, I think, a Luka turnaround trying the Dirk fade, essentially, that misses. And you get a 3 the other direction. And it's just like empty possessions in the final couple minutes. Like, Dallas built that 10-point lead, and then it was empty possession with a not good shot, a super deep, highly contested 3 late in the shot clock. Another empty possession in that, Luka kind of got to his spot, but he didn't execute it well enough. And I don't just mean in terms of miss. He looked completely off balance even in the shot, even by the standards of a fadeaway, let alone a Dirk fadeaway. He looked like he was almost falling as he took the shot, didn't get the call, so it's another empty possession there. And then, yes, you have the situation where he has the turnover in the final 16 seconds and a fast break going the other way. Like, that really, to me, felt like that was going to decide the game, was that turnover and that fast break. So I'm thrilled that Dallas managed to hold on and close this out for a 105-100 win. I am thrilled that we have a 3-2 series lead. We should have had a 3-0 lead. We should have, but we failed to put Game 3 away. Worse, we came out and laid an egg in Game 4. This is a good response, not just tactically, not just from the standpoint of adjustments, but it's a good response to adversity late in the game, and even overcoming your own poor performance in that regard. The final minutes, aside from those 2 threes by Porzingis and Tim Hardaway Jr. that put it in that situation, aside from those, it really felt like the wheels were trying to come off. So to be in this situation where you are one win away from the second round, possibly avenging last year's playoff loss, is pretty special. Porzingis had some big shots in this game. He played better than he played the past couple of games. I still have not seen the... Sorry, bug buzzing around my face. I still have not seen the proverbial Porzingis game. I've not seen bubble Porzingis, bubble KP. Bubble KP almost feels like an urban legend at this point. It's almost like, was he ever real? Did that bubble unicorn ever exist? Bubbly unicorn might be the worst, softest sounding nickname a pro player's ever had. But when KP's on his game physically and mentally, he's unguardable. The problem is we haven't seen bubble KP with any consistency at all this year. We've seen glimpses of him in a game, and then he vanishes for another 10, 12 games. Still, Dallas is in a position where he's got at least 2 more opportunities to show the hell up and help us put this thing away. But it's a good win, man. I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. We're going to enjoy this win. I think they've got, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 more days now before Game 6. I think Friday is Game 6 back in Dallas at the AAC. We'll see if this team can finally get a win at home. It's been a long time since Dallas won a game in the playoffs at home. I think you got to go back to 2016 against the Oklahoma City Thunder, still sporting Kevin Durant on that roster. It's been a minute. It has been a minute, but we'll see. That's going to do it for my time, though, guys. Again, Dallas takes a 3-2 series lead thanks to a 105-100 victory in LA. How about that? Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace. Now I have to awkwardly hold the peace sign as I hit the end button, and peace.